All right, Carl, go ahead and introduce us.
All right, guys. So this is the finals of the Kansas City Midseason Showdown at Game Cafe. We've got Ricky Green. He's on the left with the Ho-Oh team, and we've got Ben Romas with the Kyogre team. And I was just informed that this is actually his first time getting CP, Ben, which is pretty awesome. And he's in finals here, so they have not played each other. Whitney, why don't you take over here? My son needs me.
It sounds like your son wants some attention, so go ahead, man. All right, so the final match for both of these players. All right, sorry about that. I had to refresh due to some technical issues on my end, but we're back. So as you can see, Ricky utilized. Oh, just kidding. We're gonna get into this. So let's just get started. See how these players are planning on approaching this match. As Carl was saying before he had to step away, this is actually Ben's first event that he's won any CP at, and he's playing in the finals. So what a run for him. I do not know if this is like his first event ever or just the first time he's had success, so I'm not trying to like say anything one way or the other about him. Excellent. Leonard has just informed me that it's actually his first ever event. Oh, just kidding. I can't read. He said it's not his first event. Disregard everything I've said. Let's talk about the game at hand. So, Ricky has led with the Manectric Tapu Fini lead, which we saw him utilize in his top 4 match very well, into Ben's Kyogre and Togedemaru. So, Mario is not going to be able to spread paralysis right now due to rain that is in effect. However, it is protecting that Kyogre from any electric attacks from Ricky's Manectric. Lightning Rod. So Manectric's in a little bit of an awkward position here. It can't, it can't Volt Switch out, which is something it probably definitely wants to do. Switch anything in onto the and just take a ton of damage. But Togedemaru protecting that Kyogre with its ability Lightning Rod. So we do see the Origin Pulse miss the Tapu Fini. Not the worst thing to miss given and resistance to Origin Pulse, but unfortunate nonetheless. We also see Ricky, similar to how he did in his top 4 match, not Mega Evolving his Manectric in order to keep that active on his side as well to protect Tapu Fini from like a potential Zing Zap coming out from this Togedemaru. So it's going to be interesting to see if he goes for like a Snarl or an Eerie Impulse into the Kyogre. However, we do see in here, so Zygarde is going to get an immediate +1 special defense boost thanks to the Misty Seed and Misty Terrain, as well as a Light Screen coming up. Togedemaru going for a U-turn. Togedemaru getting off of the field as well, giving Ben the opportunity to, kind of try and switch into his advantage. So this Zygarde, we've seen it have some incredible bulk so far today in this tournament, as Landorus does come in, gets an Intimidate off onto the Zygarde. So that's going to be a pretty big Intimidate, as it's going to kind of slow down Zygarde from being able to like boost up and start KOing things. Also, we do know that this Landorus does have the Z ground, which is going to allow it to deal a heap of damage to either one of Ricky's Pokemon. So Zygarde, you know, it took that Origin Pulse very, very well. Screen and Misty Seed boost. Will it be able to take a combination of attacks from the ground? We'll have to see, I suppose. So, switching out as Rock Slide comes out, which would have caught that Shedinja. However, Shedinja fortunately was able to avoid the attack, keeping its Focus Sash intact. As Ice Beam does come out into the Zygarde, how well does it take this? You know, very well, but definitely does not want to take another one. So, you know, a little bit of a tricky situation here for Ricky. Is going to be threatened by Rock Slide from this Landorus. You know, he does have the Ally Switch Mind Games. You know, Zygarde does not want to take another Ice Beam right now. It kind of wants to get Heal Pulsed before that happens. I have to see, you know, who can win these Mind Games. Does he Ally Switch? Does he not? Does he protect his Zygarde? There's just a lot that could happen here. It's kind of going to come down to which player can read the other player more successfully. Shedinja, of course, does have its Focus Sash intact. So it will be able to take one Rock Slide from this Landorus. As we do see the Kyogre going for a Protect, and Zygarde going for 1,000 arrows. So that's not going to damage the Kyogre due to Protect. It is going to get, you know, a little bit of chip on this Landorus for a Rock Slide. This time, Rock Slide connecting with both Pokemon. Hit for good measure on Shedinja, who activates its Focus Sash. And Shedinja goes for a Toxic. However, because Landorus was knocked down due to the 1,000 arrows, it gains the protection from status that it gains the protection from status Misty Terrain gives. So that's actually sort of a, you know, an interesting interaction, one that it appears that Ricky didn't consider when he selected his moves, and honestly, I can't blame him, because that's definitely not something that would be on my mind at this time either. So Shedinja, now that it's down to its focus, you know, it doesn't have its Focus Sash for protection any longer. You know, it wants to get the heck out of there. So this 1,000 arrows connects with both Pokemon, deals almost trivial damage to the Kyogre and Landorus, and Kyogre goes for an Ice Beam. Did he get it? He did get it into the Zygarde slot. That KO. And so that's a really big KO. We have seen just how threatening a setup Zygarde can be, and I'm sure that feels really good for Ben to get off the field and not have to worry about anymore. You see Tapu Fini take the field in Zygarde's place for field. This Manectric, of course, wants to fire off an electric attack into Kyogre, but has to be mindful of a potential switch in from Togedemaru. Then Ricky's got to keep on his mind. And Tapu Fini, of course, you know, to fire off some icy winds. It's going to get some good damage, just by nature of being quad super effective, as well as getting some speed control. So we do see Landorus switching out, not wanting to take that damage. Togedemaru coming in to electric attacks coming from Ricky's Manectric, which could be important here depending on what Ricky decided to go for. But he could have also gone for an Eerie Impulse, which maybe is an electric attack and I'm just not smart. Hard to say. So we do see Manectric protect itself. Doesn't want to take a potential Earthquake there, as the Icy Wind does connect, gets a little bit of chip damage, and more importantly than that, gets a little bit of speed control. The Origin Pulse coming out from this Kyogre, probably not going to deal a ton of damage. And he actually deals a decent, of course, a critical hit. So that gets a critical hit through the light screen that Tapu Fini had set up. So deals a decent chunk of damage to the Tapu Fini there. Of course, this is 2 speed, but right now it's not too worried about what it's looking at on the field. Manectric cannot hit it with an electric type attack. Tapu Fini doesn't have a whole lot of offensive power on its own. So in comes Shedinja. Shedinja's not going to be taking any damage from Pokemon, as Tapu Koko does come onto the field. So Tapu Koko, not in a bad spot to fire off some discharges, I suppose. Brave Bird. Some physical variants of Tapu Koko have been carrying that, as Ricky goes for the Snarl, the inside of the field. Special attack drop on both of those, as Shedinja, of course, since electric type attacks are not super effective, thanks to its ability, it takes no damage from that Togedemaru. So Ricky's in a position here where he has to get rid of the Landorus, because the Landorus potentially could be the only way that Shedinja can be injured. So we do see a taunt coming out, Koko into Shedinja, which is going to prevent it from going for a Toxic or anything of that nature. As turns out, and it looks like in here, not a bad switch. Of course, it can be very threatening to this. And Shedinja cannot use Toxic, so that was a very good taunt from Ben there. So now again, Shedinja is in, a pretty good position, at least for this turn. It seems like neither of the opposing Pokemon can hit it, but again, Ricky's main problem is he has to find a way to get rid of that, or else Shedinja's just going to go down to a Rock Slide. Of course, Manectric here, while it can threaten that Kyogre, and it does hit that Volt Switch into Kyogre, dealing a good chunk of damage there. Ricky's saying, oh well, if you switch in Togedemaru, I lose my attack, but I don't think that's what you're about to do. I think I'm fine to go for it. So he gets a good chunk of damage off onto he gets a good chunk of damage off onto the Kyogre. Tapu Fini survives that Thunderbolt and eats its berry up, which is going to be really good for it, as Shedinja goes for a Shadow Claw also into the Kyogre and barely misses the KO. Shedinja's around for a little bit longer. Again, it's in a safe position due to not taking damage from any of the attacks that we've seen so far from both of Ben's Pokemon. So Tapu Fini, of course, threatened for KO from Thunderbolt. Being taunted, of course, is very beneficial because now you don't have to worry about ally switch shenanigans. Alright, so we see into Togedemaru. Togedemaru is going to be able to threaten Fake Out here, not into Shedinja due to being immune to it thanks to its ghost typing, and Tapu Fini actually is taking these attacks very well. Having light screen up, removing the terrain boost and everything else is just so beneficial for it. And it does get an Icy Wind off onto both targets. So Shedinja's taunt has now worn off, meaning it can go for some ally switch or other shenanigans if it so chooses. But there's not necessarily a ton of advantage for that. That is another thing that this discharge from Tapu Koko can be very effective for. You don't have to worry about, come on, I want to hit move slots. Well, discharge is hitting both slots anyway, so it doesn't matter. Ben is going to have to figure out a way to deal with this Shedinja, and I believe his only way to really deal damage to it is going to be with his yes. So we do see another taunt into the Shedinja that's going to prevent it from going for a Toxic if that's what it wanted to use, and an Icy Wind into both Pokemon again as Zingzap goes into the Shedinja. Looks like he was fishing for that ally switch, and loses his Togedemaru for his trouble. So now Ricky brings in his which is on a very, very minimal HP, but looks like he should be in an alright position as far as Kyogre goes. It can't hit the Shedinja anyways, and Tapu Fini is on such low HP that it should go down relatively soon regardless. Thing that Ricky is going to have to be aware of is he's starting to run very, very low on your time. He's down to less than 20 seconds, which leaves not a lot of time to make his decisions. So he could be seeing himself, in the driver's seat and taking a loss anyways because he runs out of time. Down to just 3 seconds remaining of your time, which is not going to be enough to finish this game unless he can get, all 3 KOs on this next turn, which I don't think he'll be able to do. Alright, so we do see the Shadow Claw, but it goes into the Tapu Koko and not the Kyogre. So it went into Tapu Koko's Protect. Unfortunately not able to take a KO, which he really needed to do that turn. So Tapu Koko, Kyogre remaining on the field. Ricky is out of your time, and I don't believe there's a way he can take 3 KOs this turn. So I believe we're going to be seeing a loss due to timer, which is really unfortunate. You hate to see it that way, but it's sort of something players have to keep in mind when playing. You don't have all day. Unfortunately, that's just the way the game is designed at this point. Keep in mind during your game. So we see the Snarl coming up from Manectric. Connects with both Pokemon. That is going to pick up the KO on Kyogre. I imagine Shadow Claw will be able to pick up the KO on the Tapu Koko. But seeing as Pokemon remaining and Ricky's out of time, I think the win's going to go to him. So that's something we'll see in Game 2. It looks like Ricky had a pretty solid game plan. His Shedinja is able to avoid a lot of damage due to Ben just not having the Pokemon around. But unfortunately, he just wasn't quick enough to capitalize on that advantage. Alright, so here we go, jumping into Game 2. On the left, again, you see Ricky's team, which consists of Manectric, Zygarde, Ho-Oh, Tapu Fini, Incineroar, and Shedinja. And on the right, you see Ben Romas' team, which consists of Kyogre, Togedemaru, Incineroar, that have Intimidate, sorry, it's a Landorus, Rayquaza, Tapu Koko, and Milotic. So we saw in Game 1 that can play the long game with Shedinja. He has to get rid of certain threats on his opponent's team, mainly like the Rayquaza and the Landorus are the main things that are able to hit the Shedinja at all. If he can remove those threats, Shedinja's in a position where it can win the game for him, but he has to play a little bit quicker, be a little bit more decisive in order to have enough time available to make that happen. Ben, pretty confident, ready to go. You know, he picked his team relatively quickly, as Ricky is trying to figure out, you know, what approach do I want to take. Like his Zygarde took a lot of damage from Ice Beams and wasn't able to be quite as effective as it has been in previous matches we've seen him use it in. So here we go. Game 2, turn 1. We're gonna see how these trainers have chose to you know, adjust or not adjust in order to prepare for this match. So he leads with, again, Manectric and Tapu Fini into Togedemaru. So both teams have, or both players have Lightning Rod available right now. Both players have a bulky water type with Icy Wind available. There's a couple of differences between Tapu Fini and Milotic, obviously, and Trick and Togedemaru do not operate the same at all, but there's a little bit of similarities going on. So Manectric goes ahead and just switches out into Zygarde, getting that +1 special defense from the Misty Seed right away. Of course, this Togedemaru does have Fake Out pressure. We do see the Fake Out into the Tapu Fini, so no Light Screen this turn, as Icy Wind comes out from Milotic. That's going to be a big -1 speed on that Zygarde, and just a little bit of chip damage on both of them. So Zygarde, of course, you know, it is boosted as far as its defenses go. Tapu Fini could put up a Light Screen to boost that further, but it is going to have to deal with Milotic, you know, spreading Icy Winds, you know, and kind of preventing it from being able to deal damage quickly. So Zygarde's not in a bad spot. It is going to be interesting if it can take, you know, several Ice Beams or several Icy Winds. So Togedemaru, switching out, does not want to take a ground type attack from Zygarde. Kyogre. So Kyogre is going to be able to hit that effective damage with an Ice Beam, but it's probably going to take 2 hits in order to KO it. If it, you know, especially if Light Screen on this turn. Icy Wind coming out from Milotic, Zygarde avoiding the attack, you know, to his credit, but Tapu Fini taking one there. Zygarde going for a Dragon Dance, so that is going to reset and allow it to boost its attack by 1 stage. And Tapu Fini does go for the Light Screen, which is going to be very important for like the long-term survivability of this Zygarde. That's going to boost its special defense even more, which is going to be super important against these 2 special attackers, especially since they're able to hit Zygarde for strong damage with Ice-type attacks. So Zygarde at +1 attack is going to be able to deal a decent chunk of damage here. However, it decides to try and protect itself, you know, from 1 round of attacks, as Kyogre goes for a Protect, and Milotic goes for a Haze, so that just removes all of that it's been building up so far, as Kyogre avoids the Nature's Madness by protecting. So that's a good turn for Ben, right? He resets a lot of the boosting that Zygarde's been doing. Is going to lessen the amount of damage it can deal, as well as lessening its bulk because it doesn't have that +1 special defense anymore. It does still have the advantage of having Light Screen active. But given that it's lost its boost, Ricky decides to go ahead and switch it out as Tapu Fini takes a Thunder, deals a decent chunk of damage, but with that Shedinja on the field, again, we're going to see sort of a similar thing that we saw last game, where right now Ben just doesn't have the tools available to hit that Shedinja, barring like HP Rock or something, which would be a little absurd for these things to be carrying. Something that Ben is going to have to play around since he doesn't have anything available to hit Shedinja, and kind of pick those. Oh, who's going to ally switch? Who's going to whatever? Like, it can definitely be super frustrating to play against. So we do see the ally switch coming out as Origin Pulse comes out from Kyogre. Tapu Fini avoids the attack. And obviously Shedinja is unaffected by both of these attacks, so not a problem, as Icy Wind does connect with the Tapu Fini, deals 3 damage, and lowers its speed, but as we've seen, its speed has been lowered so many times that is real at this point. So now Shedinja's in a good position because terrain has been removed. It can go for the Toxic that we've seen it have, and there's anything that can taunt it on the field right now. So it's got at least one relatively free Toxic coming out. Again, for Ricky to play that long game that he was going for. Here's another Origin Pulse that Tapu Fini avoided as Scald connects with the Tapu Fini, and it does get the burn. So that is going to put Fini on a little bit of a timer, but since burn is only dealing like 1/16 HP per turn, it's just not going to deal a whole lot. But it does allow, a little bit of extra chip per turn. So Kyogre gets Toxic, and that's on a timer. As the toxic damage is increased each turn. So it's going to be important for Ben to have that Landorus in the back to get some Rock Slides in order to get some damage on both Pokemon and hit Shedinja regardless of ally switch. If he doesn't have that, then maybe Shedinja just wins the game. In sort of like a long Toxic stall. Isn't really in a position where he can safely switch anything in. He doesn't want to take a Toxic. He doesn't want to take an Icy Wind on something that doesn't need to take an Icy Wind. So we do see the Thunder coming out from Kyogre into the Tapu Fini, and longer active, it deals quite a bit more damage as Icy Wind also connects with the Tapu Fini, which puts it in range to go down to the burn. So now we see Shedinja going for a Shadow Claw, and that deals a good bit of damage to the Kyogre as Light Screen goes back up, and I believe Fini will be going down to its burn on this turn. Time decide what he wants to come in on this turn. He is in a good position to pick up, a couple of KOs, relatively quickly to start boosting with Zygarde, although he's not exactly in a position to take too much damage from Ice Beams. So he may not be in the best position to go for any boosting moves right now. Maybe better off just going straight for damage. Do see Kyogre switching out, wants to preserve itself since it does have one more turn of being... But it's got one more turn before it goes down to toxic damage. Wants to save that for later, so to speak. So Zygarde goes for a Protect. He's not taking any damage this turn, as he does get a Toxic off onto the Milotic, again putting Milotic on a timer as well. However, this Landorus is now on the field and can, just click Rock Slide to deal some damage to that. I wouldn't be surprised to see Ricky try to reposition, switch his Shedinja out at this point in order to preserve it again for a little bit later game. Once he gets rid of that Landorus, he's sort of in free territory to all the rest of the game. But he does have to get that KO, and it's going to be like... Do you see the Rock Slide coming out? Shedinja not switching out here, so it is going to lose its Focus Sash, putting it, just one hit away, as the 1,000 Arrows does come out from the Zygarde. Pretty minimal damage to both Pokemon, and Icy Wind comes out from Milotic. Of course, doesn't affect Shedinja, but that's a very important Icy Wind onto the Zygarde, because now it makes it slower than the Milotic, and that is a huge flinch on that Shedinja, preventing it from going for a Toxic onto the Landorus. So now Landorus just needs to click Rock Slide one more time, really, and that's going to get rid of Shedinja. This Zygarde, of course, it's been slowed down once. It does still have... Light Screen available, so it's not going to take too much more damage, but it's not in a great position since it is going to be slower. So we do see Shedinja switching out into Manectric, which has not Mega Evolved, so no Intimidate right away, as Landorus goes for a Rock Slide. A decent amount of damage onto the Manectric, as Icy Wind misses the Zygarde, which is pretty unfortunate. If it goes for a Dragon Dance, it's going to be able to reset the speed drop, but instead it goes for a Coil, wanting to boost its defenses instead. And there is that because the Icy Wind connected with Manectric, even after Mega Evolving, it will be slower than Landorus, meaning it's not safe to fire off a Hidden Power Ice into the Landorus. It could just take an Earthquake for its trouble, which is definitely not the position it wants to be in. So he could read that, or he could make that over prediction, think that getting the Shedinja on a switch, going for a Rock Slide. It's just hard to say at this point. It sort of comes down to how the players feel their best bet is. So Ricky, taking a decent amount of time there on this turn. Manectric not switching out, going for the Mega Evolution, which is getting a big Intimidate down on that Landorus. But on the flip side, it is boosting this Milotic, so tick on this turn. He runs the risk of not a problem there. Milotic survived the Volt Switch, which allows it to fire off a +2 Icy Wind. So it's going to deal twice as much damage to this Zygarde, which leaves Zygarde really low on its... However, this 1,000 Arrows does connect and does pick up the KO on Milotic. So now Ben has his Landorus available to deal with that Shedinja. And in comes Kyogre. So Kyogre should be faster than both Pokemon that Ben has on the field right now. Kyogre, of course, will be toxic, if not this turn, then on the next, which is, of course, very threatening. Gives Ricky a decent chance, depending on what Ben's last Pokemon is. Oh, his last Pokemon is Togedemaru. We have seen that. So disregard. So this Zygarde is on very low HP. You know, just a single water type attack from Kyogre should be enough to pick up the KO. Of course, it does have the opportunity to just protect this turn, as Shedinja actually goes for that protect instead. And Zygarde also protecting, neither Pokemon wanting to take a KO right now, as Landorus goes for the Rock Slide. You know, the relatively safe, or not relatively, the safe play. You would get some chip on the Manectric if it switched in, and Kyogre does go down. Oh, Kyogre does not go down. Toxic on this turn. So it looks like it's going to be, you know, Shedinja may have to switch out here. Again, Ricky has to get rid of that Landorus in order to have a chance here. And in comes Manectric, getting a big Intimidate down on the Landorus as Zygarde goes for another Protect. The Protect, of course, or unfortunately failing, only a 30% chance there, as Rock Slide deals not a ton of damage to either Pokemon, but this Origin Pulse does pick up both KOs. So now we will see Kyogre going down to Toxic, but it Landorus should be able to pick up the KO on Shedinja. Its Focus Sash is broken, so all it needs to do is hit one Rock Slide in order to end the game. Of course, you know, a little bit of an out. You know, if between Protect and Rock Slide missing, he dodges all of them until Landorus runs out of PP, but looks like that is not the case. Rock Slide does connect, picks up the KO on Shedinja, and Ben Romas is the Independence, Missouri Mid-Season Showdown champion. So he'll be going home with 50 CP for his trouble. Like I said, this is his first tournament where he's won CP. So what an accomplishment for somebody so new in the format. And also hats off to Ricky. You know, what an incredible team. You know, he's played his Zygarde. We've seen him 3 times on stream so far. He's played his Zygarde extremely well. You know, what a great team.